Good afternoon on this Shmoiling day in Boston. So yesterday's Torah portion that we read in Shul is the end of Moses' life. Moses, the one who shepherded the Jewish people out of Egypt, did the 10 plagues, brought them across the ocean, brought them to Mount Sinai, and brought them to the cusp of going into the Holy Land of Israel is about to pass away. God tells him, go up to the mountain, see the land, for you shall not go in there. With all your pleas, with all your begging, you will not go in there. And Moses asks this most powerful request to God that we spoke about last week. He says, God, Moses spoke to God saying, the God of all spirits, appoint a leader for the Jewish people who will go in front of them and go out after them, who will protect them, who will be for them. Moses realizes that his time is coming to an end, and he pleads with God as a true father for his children to look after the Jewish people and to make sure they have a leader that should understand them. But there's a very powerful nuance in the words that Moses uses. Moshe says, "Vayidaber Moshe Elokim." Moses spoke to God. Most of the communications between God and Moses takes place in conversation. 175 times in the Torah does it say, "Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Leimer," God spoke to Moses, saying 175 times, more than any other quote in the whole Torah. Yet when Moses speaks to God, he usually says Vayomer. He uses the other term for speaking, not Vayidaber, but Vayomer. Every time, except this one time, the only time in the Bible when Moses says Vayidaber Moshe Elokim. Why? There's got to be a reason. Everything's there for a reason. Well, first we have to tell you what's the difference between Vayidaber and Vayomer. Rashi tells us Vayidaber connotates speaking strong words, harsh words, or words that are straight to the point. Vayomer is more subtle. Listen softly, speaking calmly. Vayidaber is harsh words, strong words. When God spoke to Moses, he spoke reality. God told us the way it is. There's the DNA of the world. There's the gravity of reality. There's the things that have to happen, and God speaks. Vayidaber Hashem, God speaks. El Moshe Leimor. And Moshe used a different type of speaking. Say the rabbis, God would speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. He would speak clarity, truth. But how do you give that truth to people that are fragile, that are fragmented, that are not one? How do you take... Moshe understood the people, and he understood they couldn't digest it the way it was. He would have to soften it to them. He wouldn't compromise it, but he would soften it. He would find it a way to speak to them that they could take it in. When Moses is about ready to pass away, he turns to God. And he says, Vayidaber Moshe Elokim Leimor. Moses spoke. He says, listen, 175 times he spoke. Your words were harsh. They were reality. They were clear. And I went and I softened them for the Jewish people. Says Moshe to God, now that I'm passing away, who's going to do the same for them? Who's going to be the person who's going to do that? So what does God say? Appoint Joshua and give him some of your light. The rabbis tell us that the face of Moses was like the sun. The face of Joshua was like the moon. Moses was the sun. The sun gives you all its shine at once. The moon is a reflection. If you look at the whole scriptures after God passes away, whenever God speaks to Moshe, he uses the word Vayomer, not Vayidaber. You see, the word Vayidaber comes from the same root word as Devora, which is a bee. It's something very unique about a bee, that a bee makes honey that's so sweet that a bee could sting. God gave the bee the ability to sting, to protect its hive. God's words might have sounded strong. They needed someone to bring out the sweetness, and that's what Moshe did. And that's what God tells Moshe, you're right. And I'm going to appoint Joshua. And I'm only going to speak in a way that Joshua won't have to do the translation, that the people will be able to understand that sweetness. Think about life. You have children. You have spouses. You have parents. The way we speak, the way we communicate is so important. That we speak with a sweetness, not with the sting of a bee. You might say the same thing. You go to a therapist. Imagine if the therapist told you everything you had there just bluntly. No, they do it slowly. They prepare you for it. They make sure you're ready to hear it. The same is true with Torah. God gave us the greatest gift. But how do we deliver it to the world? How do we make sure that the sweetness, the greatness, the holiness of what God tells us is articulated and is brought out in the words we use? You know, there's a famous professor in Minnesota. His name was Velvel Green. Professor Velvel Green met Rabbi Feller, the Chabad rabbi in Minnesota, and started becoming closer to Judaism. Now, he was a scientist. And one day he turned to Rabbi Feller and he said, Rabbi Feller, you know, I read what you guys, what the Rebbe writes, what you guys believe in the world being only 5,000 plus years old. That's the biggest nonsense. So Rabbi Feller said, listen, I'm not an expert in these things, but the Rebbe's written about it. Why don't you write to the Rebbe? So Professor Green writes to the Rebbe this letter, pretty harsh and strong, saying, how could you be so archaic and not understand the idea of evolution, and etc., etc. And the Rebbe doesn't answer him. So he thinks that probably the Rebbe agreed with him and realized his foolishness. So the next week he writes about something else, and he started becoming closer to Judaism, and he started studying, and he put his kids in a yeshiva, and he started keeping kosher and keeping Shabbos. And one day he relates to the Rebbe in a letter that he took his kids and he put them into yeshiva. And the Rebbe writes how impressed he is and proud he is. And then the Rebbe says, by the way, what you wrote to me a couple of years ago about evolution and about our belief in Torah, the Rebbe refutes every single line of his idea and explains the Torah view. So Rabbi Green, Professor Green, asked the Rebbe, I don't understand. Why did you wait 2 years? Why didn't you tell me this right away? And the Rebbe says, because my job is to bring you closer to Judaism and to inspire you to Torah. And I knew at that time, if I would have told you, I would have just pushed you further away. You see, sometimes you win the battle, but you lose the war. How do we speak? We have to learn from Moshe. Vayedaber Moshe el Elokim le'emo. Moses took God's words that were strong, that were clear, that were meant because they came from one God. God speaks one concise way. But Moshe understood that in order to feed it to the people, he had to feed it in a way that they could be inspired, that they could digest it. God bless you. May your words always be soft. May they always be pleasant. And may they always be words that are able to let people digest the truth and the grandeur and this greatness of Judaism, Torah, and God. Have a great day.